Okay, so for this next part, you should have just attached the front and back hem bands to the front and back pieces. So just make sure you know what the front and the back portion is. So if you are not doing the optional sleeves, especially pay attention to this part. I will actually be doing sleeves in this sweater cape, so I will also be demonstrating what to do for the sleeves. And that's the part that I'll actually be stitching, but I'm just going to demonstrate it here for the shoulder seams if you're not sewing sleeves. So if you're not doing sleeves, what you're gonna do is you're gonna place your front and your back pieces right sides together, and you're going to align the shoulders. So my front is the one that's on the table right now, and then this is my back piece that's laid out on top. And you're going to align the shoulders. If you're confused about what the shoulder is, that is going to be, on the pattern piece, it's just easiest to see, that slanted portion of the top that comes right off of the neckline. So you want to put these two portions together, the shoulder portions, and you're going to pin in place. Pin that all in place on both sides. If your fabric's really stretchy or has less recovery, and by recovery I mean like if you stretch it, it doesn't go back. So if you're using like a double knit, French terry, something like that, those are gonna have less recovery than a 4-way knit fabric. So you may want to just add some clear elastic over the shoulder seam, and you'll just stitch it right in. If you're serging, you'll serge it right in. That adds stability to the shoulder seams, and it helps prevent issues with wear and tear. Once you've pinned everything in place and pinned down the clear elastic, you can go ahead and serge or stitch this with a stretch stitch at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you're gonna repeat for the other side as well. Okay, now if you're doing the sleeve option like I am doing, what we're going to do here is we're going to place our front and back right sides together like I've done. And we're going to align the shoulders. So we're gonna pin from the neckline to the first marking. So this is the first marking. Then we're gonna pin from the second marking to the end of the shoulder. If you can tell pretty easily here, I like to do my notches poking out because when I clip, I often find that I lose, I go into the seam allowance too far, and then it gets tricky at the end. So I always clip my notches facing out. So if you think that's weird, that's okay. Just do what you're used to doing. But it also makes it really easy in demonstration purposes to see where the notches are because they stand out. So you can see I've got one notch here and one notch here. What we need to do is place, obviously the front and back right sides together like we've done. We need to align the shoulders like we've done, and we're pinning from the neckline, so that's up here, to the first pattern marking. Okay, so let's clip some clips in there. Okay, and then we are going to skip a portion, the portion between the notches, and then we're gonna give it another clip after that second notch. Okay, so let's do that to the other side as well. Might as well prep it on both sides. Okay, so from the neckline here to the notch. And then we're gonna leave that opening, and we're gonna clip here after the second notch. Okay, so what we need to do is serge or stitch with your stretch stitch from the neckline here to the first notch using a 3/8 seam allowance. So we're gonna serge this little portion. Then we're going to serge the last portion from the second marking to the end. So it's not a big chunk here, just a little bit there. And then you're going to repeat that process on the other side. So we're gonna serge between here and here, the neckline and the first notch, and then leave all this open, and then we're going to serge again from the second notch down to the end. Okay, so because that's just serging or stitching, and it's pretty straightforward, I'm not actually going to show you that. I'm not going to waste your time watching that. What you do want to make a note of if you are serging is you will want to, when you stop here, chain off. You're going to chain off in this area. So you'll have that chain, or you'll go back and do the back stitching like I showed you in the other video. And with that chained off area, you'll sew that back into the hem if you want to later on. But just make sure you finish your seam here like I showed you how to do in the other video. You know, here and at the end, you just want to make sure you finish the seam. It's important. If you're using a regular sewing machine, you just simply backstitch there and backstitch here and backstitch here and backstitch here over on the end. Okay, so for those of us who are sewing the sleeves, you'll want to pay attention to this video as well. If you're not sewing the sleeve, you can just skip to the next video, and you should have or skip ahead in this video, but you should have sewn this entire length, serged it or sewn it. For the sleeve people though, you should have an opening here in the middle, finished, and an opening on both sides. So, okay, if you are sewing the sleeves, let's continue with the sleeve process here. We're gonna grab our sleeves, and we want to, just gonna set that aside. We want to fold our sleeve in half lengthwise with the right sides together. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that right now. And we're going to pin or clip this in place just to hold these ends together. And we're going to do that for both sleeves. So if you have both sleeves, you can do that right now. And what you're going to need to do is serge up this seam that you've just clipped or pinned in place. So you're going to serge this or sew this with a 3/8 seam allowance. And you want to make sure that you do finish the end there like I showed you how to do both ends, and you're going to go ahead and serge this, okay? And just a reminder to backstitch or finish your serging. This is important step that often gets missed. Give it a nice little trim. Okay, let's go back to the sleeve insertion steps now that we have our sleeve sewn. Okay, so I have both of my sleeves sewn. what I want to do is find and mark the quarter points on the top edge of the sleeve. You want to find it ultimately on the center sleeve first because it's the easiest. What I mean by the center sleeve is that it's going to be completely opposite, directly opposite from the side that you just sewed or serged. So that's going to be right here. And what you can do is, to make it easier, just kind of finger crease that a little bit. And that should just kind of leave like a little temporary crease in there for you. And then you can mark it with your clip or pin as the center point. Do the same thing with the other sleeve. And then now the other quarter points are super easy to find after that because we have now a perfectly aligned center sleeve and undersleeve. So now the sides completely opposite from those are the other quarter points. So when you're finding quarter points, often it gets really scary, or you think it might be scary. You think it might involve actually measuring and doing stuff like that. At least back when I first started sewing, that's what I thought. I thought that I had to actually measure quarter points out, and I was like, this is awful. I hate sewing knits. Sewing with knits because they're always asking for you to find your quarter points. And I thought that it was so like silly that you would have to measure these things. Anyway, it actually wasn't until I watched a Rebecca Page sew along video that I realized you don't have to measure anything. You can literally just find the quarter points based off of folding. And when you have that starting seam like we just did, it's super easy and quick to find your quarter points that way. So don't be like the younger version of me who didn't know any better and measured stuff, because that's just not fun at all. Okay, so once you found the quarter points of the sleeves, what you're going to need to do is find and mark the quarter points of the gap that we left. So grab your front and back pieces again. And the sleeves are identical, so it really doesn't matter what you do here, which one is which or whatever. So we already have 2 of the quarter points marked, as you can see, because that's where we have our notches. So the easiest way to find our quarter points is to just shuffle this up, line these seams together, and then we've got quarter point here and a quarter point over here. And once again, that was super easy, no measurement or math involved. We've got our quarter points. And I don't even need to mark the other ones because we have those side seams. So let's show you that process again with this other hole. So we've got quarter point 1, which is the seam, quarter point 2, which is the other shoulder seam. And then we're gonna just open this up, kind of hold these little guys together at the seam. And then where this fold is where 1 quarter point is, and where this fold is where the other quarter point is. And voila! Now we have all of our quarter points. And that was easy, wasn't it? Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to place the sleeve inside of the sleeve hole, or the sleeve head. Okay, with the right sides together. So however that is easiest for you is how we need to do this. So if you would like to turn something right sides out, you can do that. What I think is nice is if you turn one of these sleeves right sides out and then align it this way so this goes in side through the hole, okay? So we need to place the sleeve inside, obviously. We need to match the top center of the sleeve to the top pattern marking. Okay, so that is going to be the part that's higher up, closer to the neckline. So find where your neckline is on the top and bottom pieces, and this is the part where the sleeve, this top sleeve marking, top quarter point should go. So just to hold this up so you can see it, we've got the underarm seam down here, and then we've got the quarter point marked, and that's our center sleeve. So this marking here, this pink one that I have, is going to go with the top upper marking on the sleeve head. So let's put these right sides together at the quarter point, and I'm going to tuck this sleeve inside of the hole, and then I'm going to clip the rest of these quarter points together. And the bottom marking is going to be aligned with where that underarm seam is that I showed you on the sleeve itself. Okay, and everything should fit really perfectly in here. Okay, so I mean, yeah, I don't really need that many clips or pins to keep this in place because it just matches so nicely. But I am going to just add a couple more clips for effect. Okay, and once we've got this sleeve completely pinned, we can move on to the other sleeve and do the exact same thing. So let's find our neck seam. So that's up here on this side, and that's our first marking. Let's turn our sleeve right side out. And after we've done that, let's find the quarter point that's exactly opposite from the underarm seam. So that's the yellow one here. Okay, I'm going to slide this in to place, and I'm going to align the rights together of the center sleeve marking to the upper notch. Okay, then the next one that's the easiest to do is match the underarm seam to the lower notch. Okay. And then match the other quarter points. And match the other side to the other quarter point as well. And then go ahead and fill in the gaps here that we have with clips, just to make sure everything's nice and secure for when we go to insert the sleeve and sew it. Okay, now we should have both sleeves clipped in place and ready for sewing. So what we're gonna do is sew or serge around this circle and around this circle to insert our sleeve. And that's at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so this is the serging of the sleeve insertion. So when you go in here, just be careful that things don't get jumbled and don't get unclipped. I mean, you may need to unclip a little bit just to get your presser foot underneath your serger, or your sewing machine, but just do your best. And when we come back to the place where we started, this is good. This will allow us to finish it. Just serge a couple stitches further. Okay, and sometimes with serging, you will drop a stitch, and that is totally normal. So what you might want to do is just go back, kind of feel around with your finger. Try poking your finger through the seam you just sewed, and if your finger pokes out, just go over that area again with your serger And if nothing pokes out, then you're probably fine and you probably don't have to worry about anything. But occasionally you'll miss something. That's totally fine. It doesn't make you, you know, a lower skill level or anything. If that happens, it happens to every single person who serges. So, okay, we're gonna continue and serge the other side now, the other sleeve. Okay, would you look at this beautiful sleeve we just inserted? Doesn't it look great? So hopefully you guys are really happy with what you're making. I love seeing this stuff come along. I love seeing progress. It just makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I am winning this sewing race. So, okay, anyway, let's grab our side bands next. And this part of the process is for everyone who is going to be making a sweater cape. So grab your side band pieces. Here we go. So you should have 2 of them that you cut on the fold. Grab your clips. Are you getting used to this? You know you're gonna need something. Okay, so grab one of your side bands. And actually I'm gonna just move the main body of the cape out of the way here for right now. But grab one of the bands, the side bands, and what we're gonna do is fold it in half lengthwise with the right sides together this time, okay? And instead of pinning the long edge, like you might be thinking we're gonna do, we're actually gonna be pinning the short edges. So you're gonna do this 4 times because you have 4 edges on these 2 pieces. Move that over, grab the other side band and do the same thing. Rights together, and the short edge is what we're pinning. Just gonna make sure it's nice and lined up. Okay, now because this type of sewing or serging is super boring to watch, it's just a straight line and a straight line 4 times. I'm not even gonna bother showing you guys what it looks like because you're gonna see it yourself when you do it yourself. So let's go over to our machines and serge or sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance up these ends that we just pinned. And you want to do that for both of the side band pieces. And then we'll come back. Okay, so everything has been serged. Yay! All of these ends, all 4 of them. So next thing you're going to do with these side bands are you're going to flip them right side out and just poke with your finger the corners so that they just come out nice and crisp on the sides that we just serged. So I'm just gonna poke my finger out there. set that one aside. And now I'm going to turn this one to the right, poke it out with my finger. Alrighty, so now we have 2 side bands. Now, we're gonna do some more clipping. Hope you're not sick of clipping or pinning. Okay, grab your sweater cape, the front and back pieces. Okay, and now, as we mentioned, these are the side bands. Okay, so it doesn't matter which side because they're both the same, but open it out so that you've got front and back kind of laid out. So you should have front band, back band, and then if you have a sleeve, you should have a sleeve, you know, very shortly off of that. If you don't have a sleeve, then you just have a closed hole here. But what we're gonna do is take the band we just did, line it up so the edges are together, the raw edges. And then we're going to put the right sides together, and from the end of the back hemband or front hemband, it doesn't matter because you're going to do both, attach this side hemband. Okay? Grab your clips or your pins. This is where I feel like clips are super helpful because you're clipping 4 layers of fabric. You're clipping, you know, the 2 from the side hemband, and you're clipping the 2 from the back or front hemband. And then, you know, as you keep going, it'll go down to 3 layers of fabric, but especially for those 4 layers of fabric, if you have really delicate pins that are like for dressmaking or something like that, sometimes they just don't want to go through that much fabric. And, you know, it really depends on how thick your cape material is, but, you know, if it's a thicker, chunkier knit, clips are really going to do you a little bit better here, better service here than pins. So we're just going to clip all the way along this side till we come to the other end. And if you want to guarantee that things are going to match up, you can preemptively attach the opposite side together. There we go. Just, you know, you shouldn't need to do any stretching or anything if you cut everything according to the grain like we showed you on the pattern pieces, but you never know. Sometimes crazy stuff happens. So having the clips on both sides to kind of anchor it. So what do you think of this sew along so far? I hope you're loving it. I hope you're realizing how easy it is to sew with knits, especially if this is your first time sewing with knits. Hopefully this sew along is taking some of the fear away for you, and you're going to be a knit pattern and knit fabric lover for the rest of your life. I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm serious. It's honestly projects like these that made me love to sew with knits. I really hate hemming. I don't know if you guys know that about me, but I really hate hemming. And so when I have an opportunity to finish something with bands, I try to take the opportunity. So this sweater cape, there are no hems in this sweater cape at all. It's all finished with bands, which make it, number one, so easy to make, and number two, definitely fun and easy and some of my favorite patterns to work with because I don't have to hem. So I'm notoriously lazy when it comes to hemming. So anyway, okay, I have this whole side clipped. Now, if you need a break from clipping, you can go ahead and jump to just serging along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, or stitching with your zigzag stitch at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you're not sick of clipping, go ahead and jump to the opposite side and do the exact same thing we just did, clipping the other side hemband over there for you. So you have options. You don't have to go, stitching and stuff if you don't want to, or clipping for another million years if you don't want to. Completely up to you. I'm just giving you the general process so you can do what you want. All right. Okay, so we're back at the serger, and we're now going to be serging the side hem bands on to the sides. And you definitely want to do some back stitching or finishing so that these don't unravel. I am going to go back and do that for my first end too. Now repeat this process for the other side seam. Side hem, I should say.